Welcome to my channel and welcome to my overview of the Generate 3 by Joranalogue Audio Design. This through zero multiphonic signal generator, as it's called on the module itself, is a very complex, very versatile analog VCO. Generate 3 is extremely stable. I would go as far as to say it tracks perfectly across the whole range. I find it funny when I read in the information of other analog VCOs that the tracking is very stable. The VCO tracks up to 5 octaves or only 1 cent deviation over 4 octaves. It's nearly perfect. It's funny to me because with Generate 3 I just don't think about these things. I seem to have forgotten that decent tracking with VCOs is actually not an easy task. Of course, Generate 3 is not the cheapest VCO, so you should expect some quality, but Generate 3 is just extremely stable. It's extremely sturdy. It's really well built. The only other module that's built evenly good is the Manhattan Analog MA35 that I have in my rack. All the other ones, rings, mats, they're good, they're sturdy, but Generate 3, it's just another ballpark. I think it's a great module and you can obtain amazing sounds with it. It's a little hard to get into at first, but even the basic sounds, it sounds full, it sounds fat. It's a great module, so let's first start off with some sound examples, and then we'll get into the overview. Let's start off with just the fundamental. You can hear it's very low. It's 1 octave below the odd harmonics and the even harmonics. Even harmonics are kind of a saw wave. When turned to the left, it's the negative side. It's a ramp when turned to the positive side. I patched some things in. Let's hear what it sounds like. One of the cool things of Generate are that you can access the individual level controls via CV. On the bottom here, you can't see it because there's a cable patched in, but it's an input for the fundamental, the even and the odd harmonics. There's also a core oscillator output. That's the triangle core of Generate. You can use it just the same as the other ones. there's just no separate attenuator or polarizer for it, and it's also not affected by the phase. Let's hear the odd harmonics added to the sequence first. This already is great. There's not a lot of oscillators who can do this. You can actually use the level input, sort of like a VCA. Now let me add some phase modulation. When it's set up with 2 switches to the top, these affect the linear FM, also affected with this this knob. Yeah. You can use the AC switch kind of as an octave up. And with the button, with the knob for the linear FM, you can adjust your tuning. Adjust that CV to the bass frequency of the oscillator. Bias switch actually adds 5 volts, which in itself most of the times act kind of weird. I guess I just don't really understand it. It's explained clearly in the manual, but I read it 3 times already and it just doesn't make sense. But all in all, it's really useful. Sometimes when mid-batch I just switch one of these buttons, I just switch one of these switches and everything sounds great. But set up in this position, left switch clearly just works as an octave switch. You would think that when you turn it to the left, it's an octave down, but that's just not the case. It actually stops the core almost completely from going forward. Now let me add some phase modulation. I don't have a second VCO right now, but I'm just using dual ADSR in cycle mode to generate some sound. This is going with the positive envelope, which is cycling, into the phase input of the generate. Now when you turn this polarizer, you can hear how the phase is being modulated. When I slow down my modulator, turn these down because they sound annoying. You can hear it kind of acts like a pitch change. You can actually patch in an LFO. I have one here. Let me center this one. Sine wave. You can actually use the phase modulation input for some frequency modulation as well. It's not actually frequency modulation, but it sounds like it. Actually, in a lot of old synths that claim to use FM, there just was phase modulation synthesis. Apparently, it's a lot more stable. You also don't really get the change in frequency, although it sounds like it. But the core of the oscillator, the frequency of the core isn't changing at all, it's just the phase. But okay, can I get this into the audio rate? I don't know. Almost. No, not really. So let me patch up the ADSR again. Now I can do all sorts of great stuff with this, but one of the coolest things to do with Generate has to do with sync. I'm gonna sync the ADSR by using the read trick. It's kind of a sync. Let's hear how it sounds. Yeah, thought so. By the way, by changing the decay on the ADSR, changing the frequency, but it's also synced, so it just sounds great. What I can do, I'm not using all of this stuff. Now what I can do is I can actually access the level of the ADSR that's modulating my phase and is synced to the sine core, no, to the fundamental output. The core is the triangle, it's even one octave down. I'm syncing it to the fundamental, so I need to have it turned up all the way. But I can actually use the second channel of dual ADSR, control my level. When I turn this one into cycling mode also, you can hear how a modulated modulation into the phase input of Generate 3 sounds. I can actually AM the first channel with the second when I turn it up to audio rate. I like this. When I turn the phase modulation to the left, sounds completely different. This has a lot to do currently with the fact that I'm using a positive voltage What I mean is, it's the dual ADSR is not a real oscillator. It doesn't go below 0. But it does actually make a difference if you're using a real oscillator too. Anyway, now let me do something else. Until this point I was syncing my modulator to generate, but I can also do the opposite. So I will be using the end of decay output from the ADSR. Kind of that's a pulse wave with the same frequency into the reset input. That's a hard sync input of generate. As you can hear, it syncs to my ADSR oscillator. Like how this sounds. Now I turn it down to 0, but actually the ADSR is still going into the phase modulation, so let me turn it up. You can hear how gnarly this sounds. Let me play a little bit with the frequencies. Use the other sync input. It's called flip. It's a soft sync. It doesn't reset. Generates oscillator. It just flips the direction. It's a lot more subtle. You can hear it syncing anyway. The hard sync better. There, that's a sweet spot. I don't know if I can modulate the level of the ADSR as well. I can, but I don't know if it will sound good. Yeah, it does. Now with generate, with the inputs, I can still modulate the level of the separate parts of the wave. I'm using the full output, by the way, to have separate outputs for the different harmonic. But now let me modulate the level of the even harmonics with an LFO. Yeah. Maybe I should sync my LFO to the ADSR. sounds absolutely great. Now let me try to get some melody into generate. So until now the U marbles has been blinking away, but it wasn't patched up. Let me see if I can get it to work nicely. First let me sync it to the LFO, which is at 1.5 times the clock speed of this ADSR here. Okay. Normally when set up like this output should give me kind of a minor melody. Because I can't really send control voltage to my ADSR, I'm going to change up the sync direction again. I'm going to try to sync the ADSR to generate again. So it's a slave. Still modulating the bass, by the way. I was using the fundamental output for this. Yeah. Remove the sync. And now I'm just going to AM the fundamental with another output of the ADSR. Let me continue by listening to the waveforms presented at the outputs of Generate 3. There's the core wave. That's just the triangle. It's the core. Then there's the fundamental. That's the sine. Fundamental comes out at the fundamental output jack Then there's the even harmonics, that's a ramp or a stall when you turn the knob into the negative range. Then there's the odd harmonics, those make an odd shape. At the full output, you get a blend of all three of those waves, not the core. It's worth to mention that the core is not influenced by the phase modulation. The other ones are. This will be interesting when we try to make pulse width modulation, but more on that later. In the manual is stated that you can make basic waveforms, because while it's amazing to have this awesome blend of weird harmonics mixed together into a unique wave, sometimes I just want a saw wave. To achieve this, you turn this one fundamental to 50, the other ones to around 40, and you get a nice stall wave or a ramp to the right. For a clean square, you should turn these two about 80%. Then you have to fine-tune them to get the perfect query you want. Now, I mentioned earlier that the core is not influenced by the phase shift modulation, as I mentioned earlier, the core is not influenced by the phase. And you can use the core to modulate the phase. Maybe you want a pulse width modulation, but there's a way to achieve it. The way I do it is by modulating the phase with an LFO. So let's do this. This is not pulse width modulation yet. To get pulse width modulation, you need to sync generate 3 to itself. I'm adding some offset to my LFO. And there you have, after some fine-tuning, your pulse width modulation. And it can go into 0. Let me patch something up real quick to hear it in a musical context. Another thing mentioned in the manual is that you can turn generate 3, although it is stable as hell. You can turn it into a noise source. To do that, you use the fundamental output and you use the even harmonics to phase modulate the oscillator, and then, as stated in the manual, you turn all the knobs up, especially the frequency, and then and there you have it. Of course, you can make a hi-hat. Hey, thanks for watching my overview of the Generate 3 by Joranalogue Audio Design. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below the video or send me an email. I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers, so if you like the video, please share it with someone who is into modular synthesis, or maybe someone who is looking for another VCO that's not just same VCO as all the other ones. So yeah, stay safe and see you next time.